Hello and good day to you all. We are now finally back up and running with our hybrid Bible study as we return to the rich content of Genesis, and today we will aim to get through 2 chapters as we focus predominantly on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. I will also pose a couple of questions to you, and I do encourage you strongly to answer them and to participate in this Bible study. The aim of this Bible study never has been for me to just deliver a presentation lasting 10 or so minutes, but that it is interactive, that we can ask questions, answer questions, and just go through the content together. So without further ado, let us now move into Genesis chapter number 18. Chapter 18, you say, Pastor Jared? Didn't we cover this before Christmas? Well, yes, of course we did. But I thought it would be nice just to do a very brief recap. We're not going to go through the whole chapter, but I would like to focus in on the very beginning here. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes, this is Abraham, and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. Now you may recall last time before Christmas we talked about who these 3 men were. Who could they possibly be? They were very important as we carry on reading through chapter 18. And we came to the conclusion in our Sunday morning Bible study at 9 o'clock here at St. John's that 2 of them were angels and the other one was God. Now we're not just plucking this idea out of thin air. There is content later on in this chapter that leads us very firmly to that conclusion, and indeed at the very beginning of the next chapter as well. So the first bit here is verse 22 of chapter 18. So the 3 men, turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Okay, very good. 2 men, God, 3. Further proof, chapter 19, verse 1, the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening. So here is proof that what we said before about who these 3 individuals were in fact 2 angels and of course God himself. And one thing that I almost forgot to share with you, which was going through my mind as I moved into chapter 19, was the content of verse 16 of chapter 18. Then the men set out from there and they looked down toward Sodom. So 2 men, God remained. The 2 men of course appeared in Sodom at the beginning of chapter number 19, where God rescues Lot. Now, I think all of us who have gone through Bible studies in the past in Genesis, who have gone through Sunday school, have talked about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Sodom was not a very good place, as we see towards the end of chapter number 18, where Abraham intercedes for this city. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous from the wicked? This is what Abraham asks in verse 23. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death and the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? Very interesting that judge is capitalized here. And the Lord said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Now what we see coming towards the end of this chapter is how the number slowly whittles down until the very end. Verse 32, then he said, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again but this once. Suppose 10 righteous people are found there. He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. So please, dear friends, remember the number 10. Okay? Remember the number 10. So the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening at the very beginning of chapter 19. And it was their plan to spend the night in the town square. But Lot pressed them strongly in verse 3. So they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. This, of course, was something quick that was put together, hence the unleavened bread. So it just gives you the idea that this feast was put together very quickly, of course. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, so it's the whole entire city, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Verse 5. That is the English Standard Version translation. And I know for a fact that there are other words that are used instead of the word know in terms of relations, i.e. sex. We want to have sex with these men. So this comes from the Hebrew verb, as we all know, of course, yada, which is to know, which sometimes denotes the act of sexual intercourse. And if you are so inclined, you can look at Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, 17, 25, and chapter 19, verse 8. So the intent here was for the men to have homosexual relations with these two individuals. Now, isn't it interesting how the term sodomy, S-O-D-O-M-Y, I never really said it out loud, so I hope that I said it right. Its origin comes from this passage here in Scripture. I think that's quite interesting, actually. For some reason, I didn't put two and two together before now, so that's kind of interesting, I think. But they were acting wickedly, absolutely despicably and disgustingly. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly." Good point. "Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man," 2 virgin daughters. "Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." Now, this is an interesting one. How would you describe Lot's actions here? Protecting his guests, but in modern day speak, throwing his own flesh and blood, his daughters, under the bus, saying, "Look, I'll take care of these men, but you can have my 2 precious daughters." What do you think about that? Do you think that was a good thing he said? Or do you think that was a bad thing he said? Again, good question. I'm curious to see what you think. One thing that came up in my study Bible, something I did share on Sunday at 9 o'clock, or just afterwards, of course, is the view about Lot's actions here. In desperation, he offers his 2 unmarried daughters as substitutes, a shocking, cowardly, and inexcusable act, even if he intended this only to be a bluff or expected the offer to be rejected. The reaction of the crowd who reject this notion only confirms the truly evil intent of their actions. Interesting. I really am curious to see what you think about that. So please, I encourage you very strongly to put down your thoughts and questions of your own under this video on YouTube or Facebook. Right. Let us move on here. The men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here, sons," and this is the two angels here, "sons-in-laws, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city, bring them out of this place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting, so they did not believe a word he was saying. They thought he was merely joking. Morning came. They encouraged Lot to take up his wife and his 2 daughters, lest they be swept up in the punishment of the city. Note here the parallels, the links between this and the very end of chapter number 18 as well. Towards the end here, I'm just skipping a little bit here. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. The one verse which is coming up now is one that we all know, all of us know, I'm sure. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Question number 2, do you think this was a just punishment? If so, or if not, why not? An image that I shared with those who were in attendance on Sunday is this. Maybe when you were growing up, you went on a car ride with your parents, and a few yards ahead into the distance, there has been a big accident. There's an ambulance, there's a fire truck, there's a police presence, just a lot of hubbub going along. And as the people at the front of the car, i.e. your parents, see, there's blood, there's someone in a stretcher, maybe there's a blanket over them, they've died, and they say to you, hey Jimmy, hey John, hey Mary, hey Christine, or whatever your name is, close your eyes, look to the floor, read a book, whatever you do, do not look outside your window. What do you do when something happens like that, when you are told not to do something? Do you read the book? Do you look in the other direction? Or do you do exactly what you've been told not to do? Of course, the natural instinct for us, because we're sinful people, is to ignore what has been told to us. We look to our right, we look to our left, and then bang, we have completely rejected what our parents had told us to do. So please give me your thoughts on that and the punishment for Lot's wife. Finally, at the very end of chapter 19, Lot and his daughters are together. They are living in the hills, separated from absolutely everybody, living in a cave. The daughters are despondent. They don't have their husbands to be anymore. They are all on their own, left with their father. The firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come in to us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So what they are saying here is, let us have incestuous relationship with our own father, so the line can continue, so they can have children and descendants of their own. They both lied, knew, had sexual relations with their own father, and they became pregnant with Lot's child. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. The younger also bore a son and called his called his name Ben-Ami. Moab is the father of the Moabites, and Ben-Ami is the father of the Ammonites. This incredible event in history would lead to the Moabites and to the Ammonites. So question number 3, the last question for today is, do you remember who the Moabites and the Ammonites are? Did they get on famously with the Israelites? Were they all living together harmoniously, good friends, happiness, shared ideals, principles, and beliefs in the Lord? Or was it the complete and utter opposite? Please research that, or if you already know the answer, please answer that in the comment section below today. And that really brings us to the conclusion of our Bible study for today. An incredible series of events taking place here, with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt, and of course Lot's daughters having their own father's child, or children I should say. So remarkable, absolutely remarkable set of events, which will, I'm sure, and I hope truly, brings a great deal of discussion. Again, this Bible study is a group effort. It's not just about me talking and presenting to you for a period of time, but it's for us to consider together, to ask questions, whether it's in our own private settings as families or as individuals, but also in the public sphere as well. And please know that there is no question that is too stupid, basically. Every single question, even if you think it's useless or not interesting or anything like that, could not be further from the truth. Because by bringing in our own points of view, our own questions and views, we are encouraging one another to look at things from different angles, to maybe consider things we haven't considered before. We are all in this together, dear friends. So I hope you have enjoyed this Bible study. I hope you've had a chance to meditate and look upon the words of Genesis, and that you have a good day ahead and a good week, of course, as well. And I look forward to seeing you all, God willing, on Sunday at 10:15, be it online or in person here at St. John's First Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bridgeton, New Jersey. So please consider what has been spoken about today, ask questions, look at your Bible, and I pray again that you all have a wonderful day. Take care and God's blessings.